If I ever had any doubts about the power of story, I became a believer one early morning in October of 1996, somewhere between 8 and 8:30. Here's what happened. Dad was in a nursing home. His eyesight was diminishing. Mine was very clear, but he was having trouble swallowing, and the doctor had examined him and had determined that he needed to make some tests, take some x-rays that could only be done at the hospital. And so he was trying to explain to Dad that they were going to do that the following morning. Dad was having trouble understanding. He was also having some trouble hearing. I had my portable tape laptop computer with me, and I had a printer. And so I made some large print sheets of paper to explain the procedure to Dad. He understood. And when I asked him if he knew what was going to be happening, he said yes. And I asked him if he agreed, and he said yes. So the next morning, the ambulance came, and the attendants, I couldn't have asked for anybody to be more considerate. Dad was never a large man, but I think probably only weighed 160 pounds at his height. But by this time, he was down to about 85, 90 pounds, 97 years old. Dad never complained a lot. And even though the attendants were very gentle and considerate as they moved him from the bed to the gurney and into the ambulance, I could see that every time they moved him, Dad would wince and grit his teeth. The ambulance ride was as easy as they could make it. Only one stoplight, 6 miles away. But the same thing. Dad was not saying anything, but was obviously in pain. When we got there, they moved him onto a gurney with no padding on it, which didn't seem to be a problem because the doctor had arranged for us to be the very first there, and they would take the x-rays and Dad would be taken back to the nursing home. In his eagerness to have us there first, we had actually beat the technician, and so Dad was on that gurney much longer than we anticipated. They moved us back to a room, and we had passed the point of talking. Dad was lying there on his side, and I was trying to read a little bit, waiting for the procedure. I looked around to my right, some movement, and I noticed that the door was slowly beginning to open, and I was kind of puzzled. And as I watched, a man about my age, maybe a little younger, slowly coming into the room, bent almost double. And as he passed me, he looked up at me and said, "Kidney stones." Well, I've never had kidney stones, but I understand they can be excruciatingly painful. And then he turned and he saw Dad, and because he was bent almost double, he was about the same eye level with my dad. And he saw him and recognized him. He said, "Mr. Hale." And Dad said, "Yeah. Who are you?" "I'm Ben Johnson. I was one of your pupils, one of your students in high school. You remember when you taught shop at Holtville High School?" Dad said, Yeah, I was one of your students." "Who was your mama?" "Maud Johnson." "Oh, yeah. How's she doing?" "She died about 2 years ago." "Oh, I'm sorry." And Ben said, "Mr. Hale, do you remember the time?" And he started to tell a story of something that had happened when Dad was teaching industrial arts, or shop as it was known. And Dad listened and heard the story, and he chuckled a little bit, and then he told one of his own. And Ben answered with another one. And they were like that for, I don't know, I lost track of time, but it must have been almost 10 minutes. And here was this 97-year-old man in excruciating pain, lying on that hard gurney, and this other man who was obviously in pain from his kidney stones, looking at each other and telling stories. And I thought, the power of story to transcend, at least for a moment, the pain. Dad's time came, they took the test, moved him back to the nursing home, and the doctor proceeded to care for him as best he could. My dad died not too long after that, and I was thinking about that. We had some pretty good moments together near the end of his life, telling stories to each other. And I would say to this day, if anybody ever questions the power of story, my mind goes back to that October morning in Prattville, Alabama, when this man with his kidney stones and my aging father, in the midst of their pain, told stories and transcended the pain, at least for a little while.